Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Lucas Keller with Milk and Honey, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hi, friends. It's the 59th edition of Promoter 101. I'm Dan Steinberg, and this is my pal, Luke Pierce.
Dan, great to be back. We're excited about today's Promoter 101. We're going to be joined by Billions Corporation's Adam Voith, Works Entertainment's own David Britz, and Tales from the Road with CID's Dan Berkowitz. Plus, of course, News of the Week.
I want to take a moment to thank all the listeners that met us in Boston, Nashville, and this week at Billboard in LA that stopped and shared that they liked the show. It really means the world to both of us. Thank you so much for your support and for listening and for stopping and telling us. We love talking to you. Please, anytime you see either of us, let us know what you like. Let us know if you don't like. It really is rewarding. Thank you for that.
Absolutely, Dan. We've been really, really lucky to have some amazing crowds over 2017, some awesome audiences, some great participation, and just the emails alone from people stopping in to say, hey, we enjoy listening to the podcast and listening to what you're doing really means the world to us.
I wanted to give a shout out to the students from Berklee School of Music that did make the journey not only to see the podcast live, but we're at Billboard this week. So many of them came. A lot of them took the time to talk to me, and it was great to have the input and feedback. It's awesome to know that you're looking for jobs in the industry and you're finding resources by listening to the podcast. It's just awesome.
Lucy Lawler-Freese, Rival Entertainment and the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you're a fan of the podcast, catch up live when we come to your town on tour.
That time of year is approaching. We're all, of course, excited for Dan's sit down at Jim Louie's Aspen Live Conference on December 8th. He's going to be interviewing the president of Ticketmaster North America, Mr. Jared Smith.
I cannot wait to hear how that interview comes out because I truthfully don't know Jared that well, and looking forward to learning all about him. David Marcus talked to me this last week and tells me I'm in for a treat, so I'm excited about that. We'll also be rolling into the Big Easy January 16th for Promoter 101's first time ever appearance at FlyCon, and we're bringing with us Brooklyn Bowl's own Peter Shapiro, the great Shappy.
Really looking forward to that week, Dan. Going to be a great time to kick off 2018. In the meantime, just keep up with us on Twitter. Steiny is at The Jew. The show's at Promoters 101. That's right. That's Promoters, plural. And I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
It's not always just got to be about me and Luke going back and forth. We want your input, your thoughts. Email us any of your ideas at steiny@promoter101.net. We really do want to hear from you.
You know, Dan, on episode 58 of Promoter 101, our buddy Connor submitted a theme song challenge remix for our theme song to Promoter 101, which is called Tongue Bath. It was originally written by APA's Craig Newman. So we're challenging all of our listeners out there. If you want to take a crack at rearranging and re-recording this song, send it over to us. Send it over to steiny@promoter101.net. If we like it, we'll use it on the air. But you've got to be willing to waive any rights so we can use the track. We'd love to hear your versions. Send them in.
Also, it doesn't have to stick to the original. You can do anything you want so long as it says Promoter 101 somewhere in the line. Feel free to get creative. We can't wait to hear what you got. If you've missed any of our past episodes on Promoter 101, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week we feature a classic reissue of episode 16 featuring artist manager Jake Gold, known for his work with the Tragically Hip as well as being a judge on Canadian Idol. That's right, Jake Gold was a judge on Canadian Idol. One guess on what judge role he played. Also, bonus interview with Seth and Alma Sheck from Access Event Solutions. If you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
And of course, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast. And please help us spread the word by telling your friends in the industry about this podcast and drop us a review if you've got a moment.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman.
Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, it's time for News of the Week. We're coming out of the Billboard Touring Conference this week where you made an appearance and you knocked out some interviews for Promoter 101. The awards had some great highlights this year. You saw Chance the Rapper's manager, Pat Corcoran, taking home Manager of the Year over Scooter Braun and Jeffrey Azoff. You saw Paradigm winning Best Agency over CA and WME. And Lil Uzi Vert was the breakout artist win over Sam Hunt and Shawn Mendes. Live Nation took home top promoter, and our buddy Sid Greenfeg from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas took home the awards over MSG and the O2. Dan, you were down there. I know you weren't at the awards, and you knocked out some really amazing interviews that we kind of teased on socials this week for Promoter 101, but what was your takeaway? What were some highlights that are going on in LA this week?
It's a good hang. It was a better conference than it had been last year in LA. Dave Brooks and his team really brought it. The Montage was a great location. Lots of cool things to walk to. The vibe was cool. There were bars everywhere. It was easy to get a drink. You were constantly bumping into people. It was a scene, and it was a good time. Now, that said, Billboard, go back to New York. We want it. We need it. It's our chance to go to New York, and everybody's going to go to LA for Polestar. Let's make New York Billboard's territory. It always was. Let's take New York back for the good guys. Let's do this now. But with that said, we got some great interviews in the can. Louis Messina, it's going to be a barn burner. We're going to run that next week, and it's going to be the entire episode all Louis. It's that good. He just brings it. We also got some other cool stuff. Lucas Keller was with us. Dan Berkowitz. Really amazing people coming up on the podcast. It's going to be great.
Dan, it feels like it's that time of the year as well, too. You know, we're coming out of Billboard, but Polestar is just around the corner. And this morning, we're recording this on Friday afternoon, Polestar unveiled their nominees for the 2018 Polestar Awards. There's 37 categories: Best New Headliner, Stage Production, Music Festival, Personal Manager of the Year, Talent by the Year. Some big names were nominated, including Bruno Mars, Coldplay, Garth Brooks. One of the categories, though, I got to take a second and highlight is Best New Venue. And included in the nominees is the Levitt Pavilion in Denver, Colorado, booked by none other than Emporium Presents. Got to give a shout out and a congratulations to you and Jason for launching such a successful thing to be recognized. This has got to feel good, right?
Well, all the credit's got to go to the Levitt Foundation and Chris Zacker's team, but we're really excited to have that off the ground and running, and we're looking forward to an amazing year that's coming up there next season.
Congrats.
Very stoked, and congrats to all the other nominees. Some amazing people, well earned. You also saw some new categories this year. You can feel Ray Waddell's influence, but Best Urban Tour, Best Pop Tour, Best Rock Tour. It's kind of feels a little bit more like some of those categories where Billboard's stacked. So you're seeing the influence already pour down from the top. But congrats to everyone nominated. Should be a fun award show. Vans Warped Tour is announcing an end of an era. Kevin Lyman is saying this will be the final year. They announced the routing, and there are a few markets that they've always played that were left off. Seattle, Portland, Philly. Unless they add some markets, it sounds like you have seen your last Warped Tour date ever.
This is crazy. That's an institution that's been around for decades and decades at this point. To see it go away in the manner that it did, it felt like too little for something so significant for so many people. Obviously, it's tough to produce such an event every summer like they have been doing. There's been a few little rocky patches in the past 2 years with Warped Tour, but to see it go away like this is kind of sad for me, Dan. How about you?
I know Kevin, and he's a friend. I bumped into him this week, and I gotta believe, based on the success of Punk's Not Dead and Punk's Not Dead 2 and some of the other events that him and John Reese have produced, I think we're going to see Kevin still in the festival space, but it's going to be less about touring and more about destinations and the bigger picture for those guys. And I think they're looking for a new challenge and looking for the next step. But I don't think we've seen the end of Warped Tour. It just probably won't be a tour. It'll probably be an event, I would imagine. Kevin is too young to retire, and he's just too good at it. We're going to see more from him soon, I'm sure.
Coming off an SNL performance and an emotional appearance at Jimmy Kimmel Live, Taylor Swift has announced her first round of tour dates for 2018. The Reputation Tour will kick off on May 8th in Glendale, Arizona, and she's going to be playing stadiums around the U.S. through the middle of October. More dates are expected, including dates in the U.K., Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. Dan, this is going to be a big test for Ticketmaster's verified fan program that she has launched this tour on the back of. And I think come Aspen Live, you're going to have some interesting questions for Jared Smith. I'll be interested to see how this plays out.
The questions will have to answer themselves by the time that plays out. It's either going to be, did you know it was going to be the successful, or what went wrong? But one way or another, we're going to find out in the next couple days if it worked or not. The proof is in the pudding.
Sure.
Golden Voice has cut ties with FYF's founder, Sean Carlson. Carlson as he's been accused of sexual misconduct. Just one more of these many stories that are breaking right now.
It's hard to honestly keep track of the storylines. We had a senator accused of sexual harassment this week in Al Franken. We had a tireless number of which we discussed on last week's podcast for it. Dan, this is not stopping anytime soon.
An epidemic, it's got to go away. I'm glad that they're shedding a light on it now, and things hopefully will change.
I hope so too. There's some shakeup over at Madison Square Garden. Doc O'Connor has been abruptly stepping down as president and CEO of the Madison Square Garden Company. The longtime CAA vet turned into the head of MSG was announced that he would step away from the company earlier this week. Jim Dolan, the executive chairman of MSG, is going to step into the role of CEO in Connor's absence.
I think they should bring Phil Ernst back and make right what they, I think, in my opinion, screwed up a couple weeks ago.
There has been some shakeup over there. I know there's some new folks that are stepping in from the Cablevision world of things, directing some strategy, and I don't know. Jim Dolan's obviously heavily influenced by his partner in other ventures in Azoff, and I feel like Irving takes on this role of the Dolan whisperer. You've got some new voices over the MSG company that have come in over the last 6 months, and I think this shakeup, as a result of MSG kind of struggling with some uneven revenue over the past couple of years, and some headwinds for some of their flagship places like Madison Square Garden and Radio City, as you see this conflict with block booking and AEG take place, as well as some of these spectaculars at Christmas time not being around. The Rockettes aren't at Radio City for this year, which is like the first time that I can remember that they're not going to be there. They're going to be on hiatus for this year. Interesting times at our MSG. We'll have to see what comes from this.
Big shakeups. Shakira postponed the El Dorado tour until 2018 due to vocal issues. And, well, vocals are at least half the show. That's important.
Yeah, I'd imagine. A report this week from Celebrity Access, Coldplay grossed $500 million on their Head Full of Dreams run. The British rock group, of course, wrapped their run this past week, and it is record-breaking. According to some figures published by Live Nation, Coldplay's Head Full of Dreams tour generated $523 million in box office gross, playing in front of 5.3 million fans over the 18-month run. That is absolutely astounding, record-breaking numbers. Of course, coming off the halftime performance at Super Bowl 50 2 years ago, this is just an incredible way to launch more than 100 shows, 76 cities in 31 countries. Just massive business that no other band out there is doing.
I saw about this when Rapinoe tweeted about it. And by the way, if you're not following Michael Rapinoe on Twitter, it's almost a good enough news feed for the industry within itself of announcements and what's coming. You should definitely do that. Jeff Lynne's ELO has announced some rare dates across North America. I'm thinking about getting on a plane and heading to Toronto to check that show out. I can't wait to see them.
30 years in the making, pretty much, Dan. I think we've got to go see a show somewhere.
Farrell tells me they're playing the Forum in LA. I don't know where I'm going to see it, but I'm going to see it. It's an amazing tour. I missed the Hollywood Bowl dates, and man, ELO, we have waited long enough. It is time. And finally this week, I want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on one of the greatest promoters in the country, Jim Green. He is a great guy, and, well, honestly, he posted a really funny picture of him in cat pajamas, and I just wanted to use that picture. So we made him Promoter 101's Badass of the Week. He's deserving enough, but that picture catapulted him to the top of the... Did you see the picture, Luke? It's great.
I did see the picture, and it's something else.
He's a great partner, a great friend, and he's deserving enough. But the picture is a great Thanksgiving gift from Jim to the world, and everyone should enjoy that. Jim Green, this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Hello, this is Dan Berkowitz from CID Entertainment and CID Presents, and I am here on Promoter 101.
In the featured interview this week, we're joined by the Billions Corporation's Adam Voith.
Really excited here from Billions Corp. Thanks for taking the time.
Sure. Happy to be here.
You guys are one of the coolest agencies in the country. You're independent. You're young. Botch has been doing it forever. The mind incubator that you guys have is incredible.
Wow. Thanks.
The expansion's really cool now. Guys like Drew are on the team now, and then you brought in Bobby Cudd.
Yep. He's been such a cool addition for us, for me and Andrew down here for sure, just locally.
Andrew Colvin.
Yep. But it was just me for a while down here. And so it's been great to kind of bring Andrew in, who had moved here right after I did. But Bobby just knows this city like nobody. It's been amazing.
So has there been some mentoring then?
Yeah, definitely. He has a lot to offer, and I think he wants to offer stuff. I think he really wants to engage. I think he's excited about being around some young energy in the office. At first, it was like, oh, is this a fit? But as soon as he came on board, it feels like a very natural fit for us.
There's a like-minded vibe in that office. You guys aren't signing necessarily radio-driven acts. You guys are signing live acts that may have some success at radio, but all of your acts, yours and Andrew's and Bobby's, are live acts. They're all amazing live.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for any of our artists to be on the radio, without a doubt. It's obviously been a huge help to a bunch of our acts, but we're also proud of our acts that aren't focusing on radio, but still building a fan base with tickets. It feels like a newer vibe in this town in particular. It seems like it's a newer concept, but it really is kind of what I think Bobby has been doing from the beginning, definitely what Colvin was doing when he first started his own agency and what I was doing when I first started with Trey. None of us really knew about, understood, or gave a shit about radio at that point. It was really more about the live experience, and I think the radio has more come around to newer types of sounds in their formats than the band sort of trying to play in the format.
Your list is incredible. You had all those acts before they broke a single. You had all those acts before they got hot. So what's the process when you're looking for something? Because clearly raw talent, something you can see the diamond through the rough there.
What I'm drawn to on the first interaction with music is always songs and singers. So that's just been the general pocket. And like that seems to fall within certain genres or whatever. But in general, it's about songs and singers for me. Timing has played a big part in a lot of this stuff. For whatever reason, whether you're there first or you're there at the right time and you can sort of make that connection with the artist early, it's worked out really well for me. And I've been super lucky to kind of find really focused artists that actually have a clear vision of what they want to do. You have the basis of singers and songs and then a band or a team that has a real plan and actually wants someone to help execute the plan. It's really basic and it hasn't really changed. Even though the business has changed a shitload, it's still, I think, about proactively following a vision that's coming from the artist.
The run that Mumford has is unparalleled in the last decade. Festival headliners, radio shows, selling out their own traveling tour, from clubs to nothing to that. And it wasn't overnight, but it happened quick. That album was insane.
Yep, it was crazy. They weren't really into arenas or as any headline stuff until towards the end of the first record, but the second record really. And that's a really good example, though, of a band that we started working on our first tour, the first club tour, before radio was happening at all. We knew there was a fan base there to do small clubs, and radio kind of started happening during the process of that tour, while the band was talking about that tour, preparing for that tour. And so it happened very fast, but the band really didn't skip steps. We still made our way through the clubs and then moved up to bigger clubs and moved into theaters, and they really didn't skip steps, which I think helped, what is continuing to help, the fact that as we go on, as they're in 3 record cycles now, we feel like we're playing to a fan base that is like me. I think they love the singles. I'm sure they love hearing the bands that they love on the radio, but it does feel like they've been with the band on a longer arc than the ebbs and flows of singles. We just did a bunch of stuff way off cycle and played some markets we haven't been to for a while, and just feels like it can operate a little bit off of the traditional record cycle arc.
Watching them in Seattle open for U2 was the most connected a crowd had ever been to an opener of a U2 show I've ever been to. They know the songs, the crowd clearly connects, but those are U2 level hits. They weren't messing around. They were playing to the audience. They took that seriously and they brought it. And when they walked off the stage, they got a standing ovation, which you don't see for the opener of U2. They're not an opening act. They're an arena act on their own. But when you get asked to open for a band like U2 or the Rolling Stones or something, everybody steps down and takes that slot. It's an honor.
Yeah, and I think they took it seriously. I think they really wanted to honor that record. All those guys are ginormous fans of that record, and they took it really seriously. They were treated really well on that tour from the U2 camp and from the fans that were there. It was awesome. And I think it showed them another gear, which I think was a motivating factor for them.
Your acts play a lot of festivals. It's a big part of your world.
Yes, but I have a pretty small roster, and so maybe in terms of volume, I have less bands playing those events, but they're a huge part of everyone's plan and cycle, for sure.
When you move up to the point where your act's now headlining those festivals, cutting those deals have got to be extremely important and intense. Is that something where, when you're first doing that, you're going to Botch for direction and advice, or how did that come along? Because that had to be a little intimidating. I would imagine those are really big deals. And big looks, I mean, that sets up the whole album cycle, right?
Yeah, or continues an album cycle. Like I said, sort of off cycle, Mumford and Sons played a few festivals last year that they hadn't been to yet, and it felt like deep into the cycle to be in that position, and it worked great. So yeah, it's intimidating for sure. I think it's really competitive to get to the point where your act fits a slot on one of these events. It's intimidating, sure. And I definitely talk to Botch and anyone else that's willing to share with me on that stuff before feeling like you knew what the fuck you were doing.
Who are the guys that you consider mentors?
Well, Botch is a huge mentor. Trey at Billions is also a huge mentor. I think Bobby's become a mentor internally here. Very early on, Robin Taylor was a huge mentor to me. She took me seriously from the beginning for some reason. I don't know why, but we hit it off, and she taught me a shitload of stuff. At Arrow, Trey and I were were definitely making it up as we went along.
Trey Manning.
Trey Manning, yep. He and I figured shit out, but there were steps along the way that Robin was awesome to me. Actually saw her recently and hadn't seen her for a while, and it was great to reconnect with her and tell her that, reminder of that, because she was awesome. And there's been a bunch of people on the way on also, not just agents, managers and promoters as well, that have just been willing to go deeper with me to understand. Like, I feel like I work with a lot of acts that are really deep into nuance, and so it takes people to go a little extra mile, and there's been some great partners in a bunch of different sectors.
That's an amazingly wide talent pool, from Robin to Botch to Trey. Some pretty cool people, too. Very hip resource of musical knowledge there.
The common thread that I would say helped was sort of a music first mentality, just sort of fiercely artist driven stuff. That seems to be the common thread for me, where I can really connect to someone and move forward with someone. The framework of the music and the artist sort of fiercely being first.
I want to talk about Gentlemen of the Road. You guys came up with this concept of a traveling festival, basically, and have done it in many different places over the handful of years that you guys have done it. It's not an annual thing, but it's made several comebacks, and it's got to be a challenge to create a site, pick it, make sure it works, something that's going to be in the vision of this cool thing you guys have created, and that build the lineups you've created and do the shows you've created with the acts is an amazing thing. Can you talk about how that's come to be and how that lives and what the motivation is?
Yes, it definitely came from the band directly, who were playing a lot of sort of boutique festivals all over the world, and we're really liking certain aspects of them, and had this idea to put together their vision of this. It started as a one-day event, but has become a two-day event. The generic concept is to be in a tertiary market and to be a immersive music forward event with Mumford one night and another headliner on the other night, and then a curated lineup. Basically, generically a festival, but it's outside the box in terms of location. A big focus was to sort of engage small communities behind an event of this size, and it worked. Communities and fans really respond to it. I think we've done 12 in the States, and I think you'll see more of them. They really feel like it's a big piece of how they want to tour and how they want to present the shows. And when we've done them, it's usually been 4 a year or 4 in a season.
Have you ever repeated a location or a market?
No. Trying to regionally try different areas and not be back in the same region. And picking the cities is sometimes it's a routing concern if we're working throughout a tour, but often these are kind of the tent poles that we'll set up and then work around those.
Mike Lubin and Don Sullivan are involved with that in the States.
Yeah, those guys produce the events, and that's been an evolving relationship. There's been other promoters involved as co-producers, and we didn't have an exclusive team on our side until the last round of them with Mike and Don, and those guys were great. Mike really early on was involved with us. I don't know what to call it. Some kind of consultancy on these things early on. Going even back before we were doing the Gentlemen of the Road stopover shows, we did this tour with Old Crow Medicine Show and Edward Sharp on a train. Edward Sharp's manager had this vision for this, and Mike really came and helped put it all together and get the train to happen. The concept of the stopover sort of grew out of that. So he's been in there for a long time. And then when his relationship with Don sort of came together, Don has also just been a great natural partner.
It's funny because there's certainly a P.T. Barnum to Mike Luba. This is truly thought of from a creative place. So if you're going to try something off-brand and do something creative in your own land, he's the kind of guy that can pull that off. And then Don's the guy that actually figures out how to build it once Mike has thought about it. He's a genius. And I'm not sure who the bigger genius is, the guy that comes up with the idea or the guy that figures out how to execute that.
Those guys have a good balance. I think one needs the other. Mike is a fucking wild man. One of the most ambitious and gutsy people I've come across. And Don's a little bit of a foil, a little bit of sanity. And I like the mix. I like the balance of those two. And Forest Hills is incredible. It's an unbelievable thing they've done up there.
We've talked about Mumford quite a bit. Let's talk about Vampire Weekend. Completely different side of the spectrum. You were looking at tertiaries early on. You're like, I want to develop this band everywhere. And I remember the conversation in particular. You had a vision.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say I appreciate that a lot, but it was definitely the band's vision. That was right before their second record. First record was a huge success, and they wanted to take it further and be more outside the major markets to start the run up to this record, which had a little bit of a California theme to the record. So we did a bunch of tertiaries, and then, management and us on the agency side figured out how to do it and figure out the right people. And I asked a lot of questions and found some cool promoters that knew exactly how to deliver that. And it was awesome. And I think it really was a cool piece of the setup of that record.
They've continued to grow and continue to have success and haven't found that slump that bands that have that early success on an early album have found. Is it because their live show is so good that whether radio breaks the single or not, they're still able to do the numbers?
Their live show is incredible. I think the songs are incredible. I think with Vampire Weekend, they've had some love from radio and have definitely, that's a piece of the puzzle for them. The first 3 records feel like proper records, and people at the show seem to know the whole records. I think that they have an unbelievable arsenal of tunes. I think Ezra has an insane ability to have a very clear vision for something. I think he thinks really holistically about what it means to put music out there and put shows out there. So he is a creative force that is absolutely keeping his team on their toes to see how that turns out on a record or on a stage.
3 serious star clients on the top of your roster. Somebody's always working, if not multiples. Managing that alone on top of developing new acts. You ever have time to sleep?
Yeah, I have a small roster, and I think while you're right, all those bands, they work a lot and they work hard and they keep putting out records. But I do think that there's a certain level of sanity to the touring and the routing that keeps it manageable. And on the development side, I try to really only have a few things that are active in that building stage at the beginning. I did feel stressed and I felt pushed to the limit, and I felt like I maybe wasn't able to focus as much as I wanted individually on artists a few years ago. And so I just made some changes and trimmed down the roster a bunch, and it's been great.
Because I can imagine years where you've got Gentlemen on the Road going out. It's going to be really time intensive because each of those lineups are individually built.
Absolutely.
And the site, you've got to be pretty hands-on with that, especially since the band doesn't live here, right? So that's got to take a lot of extra time than just booking a tour.
When those things are going, it's really, really intense. And it's a lot of travel, site visits, and meetings and engagement with the community coming from our side way before the band gets there. When Gentlemen on the Road is happening, it definitely is like its own tour. Each one of those things feels as weighty as a tour. And so that's when it gets the most intense, for sure. And definitely trying to protect the ability for me to give that all I can, and for our agency to over-deliver.
And you guys really seem to. I mean, some of those lineups had Foo Fighters on them last year when they were the hottest band in the world.
Incredible that band decided to do that. You know, they definitely did not have to do that. And I think that they understood it was a unique way to play a show in Washington State. Regretfully, it's one of those that I missed last year. So apparently it was amazing on the ground from what I hear.
Arguably, the Foos could be the biggest rock band in the world at the moment.
For sure.
Most bands wouldn't invite someone that was on the same par with them or bigger to come play their event, and the fact that they were willing to share that spotlight is very giving to their fans.
It was great. I think it was a really cool move for the Foos to come do that.
The lineups all the way around looked like they were really, really cultivated with some love and took a lot of time, but it seemed like a lot of the coolest acts in the world wanted to be involved.
Yeah, the alumni of those things is super cool. You have really meaningful acts coming, helping bring their fan base out to those things. And then you also have acts that are brand new, really just starting to build their fan bases. You know, I've talked to some other agents, and I've got some acts on my own that have played these events and really seen a change in their business in the surrounding markets around these things. I mean, of course, this is the idea of festivals, right? You try to not just preach to the choir and try to go out there and find a new willing fan to come on board with you. I think those events, you know, they're small, they're remote, usually only a small little town to engage in aside from the festival itself. And so what actually happens is that the bands are the thing. It's all about these sets on these stages from early to late. It feels like the most music forward way to go in and try to play so far off the grid.
Can we talk about your career path for a second?
Sure.
Arrow was indie, cool, small.
Mm-hmm.
But you and Trey, Jesus Christ, I mean, that's a powerhouse.
Yep. Trey was really ballsy. He started an agency I think he was actually in Michigan when he started it, but, you know, based in Seattle for the majority of it, and had incredible skill at finding artists early. I very clearly remember being with Trey when he was starting to book the first national Death Cab tour, and it was so obvious that he had something great, that he had something that he was going to work on for his whole career. It was different then. There was a lot of scrappy, small, independent agencies. A lot.
There were a lot of mom and pop shops all over the place.
Yeah, there's still a few, but very few.
It was definitely not rare for somebody like Stormy Shepherd to be booking out of her apartment an Offspring, a Rancid, and NoFX tour, and that was normal.
Yeah. So yeah, and in the Northwest, he tapped into a cool group of artists and he was playing in some of the bands. You know, he was a musician himself, and he was playing in some of these bands and kind of booking them out of necessity. They didn't have agencies or weren't on the radar yet for agencies. I mean, there was a time hard to remember, where bands did not have booking agents. Relatively successful bands who'd maybe already been on the road for a few tours or put out some records might still be booking their own tours.
You have an example of any of those bands?
I mean, for me, the Mountain Goats was one. Like when I started booking the Mountain Goats, yeah, he was like, yeah, I've never really had an agent. I've just done this myself. And this was for years and years and years. You know?
They were doing good numbers too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started working with the Mountain Goats, another artist I worked with introduced me to them and kind of did a trial run. Then he was like, yeah, you should represent me. But he was my biggest act for sure. It was like a huge, suddenly I had an artist that already had a fan base, and it wasn't grinding to tell a promoter who this band is and get them to be a fan and then get an audience in that market to become fans and come to the show. This was totally different. Promoters suddenly were, hey, I've always done the Mountain Goat shows. I'd love to keep working with them. I've got a relationship with this band. And it gave me a little roadmap to see how you do this job when there's already a fan base built and there's already a sort of context built, which was huge for me.
That's an interesting comment that you just made. Making promoters fans of your band, trying to get them in there. You've got enough bands now and enough relationships where when you call a promoter, they're just going to do the band because they're on team with you and they're part of your circuit. People are going to take a chance because you've developed stuff already. You have a track record. When you're first starting, developing your network had to be a lot harder to convince people to do bands they've never heard of and before you've been making them money yet.
I think it was definitely harder, but I do think there's a big difference. Thinking about someone who maybe wants to be a booking agent, has found a couple artists that maybe don't have a national fan base yet and they want to develop it. When they're going out and trying to get holds at the Earl in Atlanta or Crocodile in Seattle or whatever, they're getting fourth holds on a fucking Monday right now. There's so many bands. But when I first started doing this, there was tons of open dates on people's calendars.
Yeah, traffic has gotten insane.
It's insane. So promoters wanted bands. But now I think in particular club buyers they have a wealth of great bands. There's just tons of great. They can't fit all the bands they want to have in their venue into their venue, but it definitely was not like that. I do recall like a second and third hold being like terrifying. Like, fuck, this tour is not going to work. I've got second hold here. You know, what am I going to do? But the competition in each market is insane. Maybe they're having to find the best of a bunch of already great options they have. In Nashville, you meet tons of really smart people coming out of music business programs or having just moved to town because they want to be in a music town. And they're like, I want to be a booking agent. And I just think, my God, it's such a different landscape for someone who is starting from no roster. When I started working with Trey, and for years, I wasn't actually aware of what CAA or William Morris or any of these companies were. I didn't really understand the model of being an assistant and moving up the ranks and then helping someone else book their roster and then having your own roster. I had no idea that was even possible. But the way that I think Trey did it, and even Botch, it doesn't seem real anymore to me.
Your move to Nashville and Billions. Did that happen at the same time when you left Seattle, or how did that relationship come that you left Arrow into Billions?
I had an in-betweener company of my own called Decorporated that I did for about a year and a half. When I stopped working with Trey on Arrow, started my own thing, and then very quickly realized I wanted nothing to do with having my own agency. I just wanted to be an agent and work for an agency. So I started talking to Botch. Pretty soon after I had started working at Billions, Trey closed up Arrow and came to Billions as well. I think Trey was more entrepreneurial in his desire. He kind of liked the idea for a longer period of time than I did of running his own agency. But then once I got to Billions and I knew exactly what Arrow was doing and how he was doing it on his own and how I had been doing it after that on my own, I knew the weight of a staff that it could lift off of an agent's shoulders. And I knew the context and the sort of internal knowledge and collaboration of an agency was something he was missing. I just could tell as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh, this is something we've never really had. And so it wasn't long, I think, before he was like, I'm coming there too. I think it's been a great fit for both of us. I am at Billions because I think it's a better place to be. That's the bottom line. I think our company is a perfect fit for me and my artists. I am really into the boutique concept, into smallness and into being nimble and being just as fiercely artist-centric as we can be. And to me, that feels like Billions. I think there's amazing things happening in a lot of different agencies. Incredible artist development, without a doubt. For me personally, and for where my tastes lie and what I think I can work on and do well, I'm absolutely content at Billions. I imagine if you're paying attention for some reason to what I'm doing with my acts, it should be, I think, somewhat clear that it seems to be okay this way. It seems to work pretty well this way. And so no one's asking anymore.
Seemingly living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started booking bands, it was supposed to be a part-time job. I never thought it would be a real career, and it became a real career quickly. And then I've been super lucky, like long runs with really meaningful acts. And I really do feel a part of the live plan and execution of many, many record cycles now for these bands. And I'm all ears about how we can change, how I can change, how our company can evolve. I think the business demands an amount of nimbleness to respond. And I just think we're great at it. I think we're small, so we can move easier, I think.
Thank you so much for taking the time and being with us.
Yeah, man. Very happy to be here. And I really dig that someone's doing this. There's a shitload of podcasts, and I couldn't find anyone actually talking about the live business. So it's awesome.
Adam has an amazing ear for talent, and he's just somebody I really look up to. He's got a great career ahead of him, and just inspired to listen to him talk.
Louis Messina, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, let's jump into some of the tweets from this past week. Can you humor me and explain what was going on in your mind when you wrote each of these Promoter 101 tweets? Let's start with this. It's as true today as ever. We learn by doing. Screw all the advice. Greatness comes from taking a risk.
Man, you got to get your hands dirty and just get into it. You learn by doing. It's just experience. Nothing else is parallel to that.
Hashtag Jim Cressman.
He is one of the most inspirational guys in the world. He's always in a great mood. He's positive. I don't know that Jim has ever been in a bad mood.
Nothing ever seems to faze that guy, and he just powers through and is an inspiration. So if you're not following him, check him out as well, too.
He's coming up on the podcast in just a couple weeks. The interview's really good, and I can't wait to air that.
If someone calls instead of emails to say something they're not willing to put in writing, they're not going to live up to it later.
It's always a telltale sign when somebody just doesn't want to put it in writing. Scares the shit out of me.
If your partners are not your best friends, you are in the business with the wrong people.
Tip of a hat to my partner, Jason Zink, and my friend.
Success is a relative term. There's always someone doing much better on a larger scale. Also, hashtag Jim Pressman tweet.
Something to strive for every day. Always a new challenge. God, I guess Cressman is deep in my head. Hey, shout out to you, Cressman.
That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Be sure to follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew. And if you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, feel free to tweet them at us.
The best ones will make the air, and the shitty ones, well, they'll make my trash pile.
This is JJ Kasiri from Circle Talent Agency, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Hey, it's time for War Stories. We're joined this week by CID's big dog, Dan Berkowitz. Give us a war story, man.
So CID started in 2007, and we did what we called an RV resort at Langerado 2008.
An RV resort, high end and low end in the same sentence, like a super Walmart.
Ethan Schwartz and Mark Brown were partners in this fantastic festival called Langerado, which used to be held in Markham Park. I always used to say it's the festival without a schlep. It was in South Florida. It was like, everyone stayed with their Jewish grandmother or Jewish aunt. You could drive right to the show. Like nobody was camping. It would be over at a certain time. It was really, really a great show. And then
make it at home in time for Kugel.
Yeah, you could. Late night Kugel. Every year, Sam Elkin and Tim Love down in ACL have a cook-off. And one year they did Kugel. And I still think Sam's was way better and he got robbed. So anyway, you could make it at home in time for Kugel. Then they moved Langerado to Big Cypress, which probably wasn't the best business decision because it was also the last Langerado. But when they did that, they added camping. And CID was brand new. Embarrassingly, at this point, it was still called Consider It Dan. Makes me cringe. So Ethan's like, so I think we want to figure out how to do RVs on site. I was like, yeah, I could do that. Whatever. That's what we do. People traveling to concerts, taking care of them. We could knock this out of the park. So we put together this plan. We rent 10 RVs from Cruise America, which is, I'm not ashamed to say, is the lowest of the rung of RV rental companies. And we put 10 up on sale. I think it was like $22.99 or something really low priced, thinking about now what all the costs involved were. And they sold out in a minute. And Ethan's like, can you get more? I was like, I'll figure it out. Boom, put more up. We get more. At the end of it, we end up with 54 RVs. We've never done anything like this before. The way we got them to the show, and I kid you not, is by putting up ads on Craigslist and on jam band message boards for volunteers to drive RVs to and from Langerado. These volunteers were jam band fans that wanted to go to Langerado for free. These are not the type of people that you would want behind an RV in a commercial setting. And I'm not saying because they're jam band fans. I'm saying because they're not professional drivers. Knowing now what I know, and if Paul Bassman or any of the other wonderful people in the insurance business are listening, they're probably cringing. But I mean, what we did is we took photocopies of these kids, and most of them, I don't even think we got all of them. Because if you can imagine, 54 kids descend on this one location, which we got. Most of our RVs ended up coming from El Monte RV. Our first 10 came from Cruise America. So all these 54 people descended on this one El Monte RV distribution center, or whatever you want to call it. They show up, me and a couple people that I work with that thank God I still work with or are dear friends with. We met them there. We tried to get photocopies of all of their licenses. We tried to figure out which person was in which RV. And then all of a sudden they were gone and they were heading to Langerado.
$250,000 piece RVs.
Yeah. If you, doing easy math, it's $10 million of RVs just leaving the lot with dude that may or may not have shown us his license and he's just gone. And our credit cards getting declined at the RV place. We're getting money sent 3 different accounts, finally getting all the RVs paid off. So we get them there. Miraculously, we get them all there. Miraculously, we get them all parked, and where we get them all parked, is not really where we thought they were going to be. We saw one place on a map, and mind you, this is our first festival outside of Camp Bisco and Summer Camp. And no disrespect to those shows, but with Camp Bisco being the Disco Biscuits Festival and Summer Camp being Ian Goldberg's festival, we knew how those were going to run. Like it was, an extension of what we were doing. This was they had a real site manager. They had processes and procedures, and you would request things in a professional manner rather than just like texting somebody being like, yo, need 3 more radios. Like it wasn't like that. So we showed up. Our 54 RVs were placed in a place that we didn't think they were going to be. They're all parked. We ended up being in a field that was further away than we thought, and the entrance to our field was on the wrong side of the RV resort. So you would actually have to walk about 150 yards the wrong way away from the stage, go through the entrance to our little compound, and to call it a compound is
generous.
Yeah, very generous. And then you would walk 300 yards the right way back to the concert ground, and then after 15 minutes of superfluous walking, you'd be on your way, just like you would have if you just stepped outside your door of the RV. And then came the rain. God, we're such idiots. We didn't have generators. We just had all of the RVs running on their own generators because I thought that's probably how this is going to work out. So we had gas that was going to be delivered to these RVs. Didn't happen because of the rain. Gas truck couldn't get in. We had water that was going to be delivered to the RVs. Didn't happen for about half of them. So RVs start running out of gas. RVs start running out of water. We literally went out and bought pallets worth of bottles of water to fill up these RVs. And if you could imagine how long that takes.
I can see you on a ladder, like pouring it in.
Literally,
like
you have to kind of get it at the right angle. And it takes a while. It was the hardest thing that we'd ever done. I will never, ever forget how underprepared we were. And not just underprepared operationally, we were underprepared financially. Program ended up losing like $25,000. So my wife, who was then my girlfriend of 2.5 months, so imagine me running around this field like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to show like my new girlfriend who I was madly in love with, like, look how much I have my shit together. And she's like, right, I'm not sure about this. So I'm like, oh, by the way, can you drive one of these back? Because one of our hippies have disappeared. So, out of the 54,
they're really easy to drive, I assure you.
Okay, so we did have one incident with an RV on the way back, and that was my wife, and she scraped up the side of an RV. So the next day, I was leaving for Disco Biscuits tour in Europe. We did travel package to the Disco Biscuits in Europe. I was flying to Glasgow for our first show. Cell phones were around in those days, and I'm on the runway in Miami, disgustingly dirty on the plane. Came from Langarado, where it was raining, and there were fire ants, and I had no clean clothes. My genius plan was to do laundry when I got to Glasgow. More on how, laundry machines work in Glasgow on the next episode. I'm sitting on the runway and I get a text message from my guy, Mike Medvin, who, by the grace of God, is still with me. He's like, yo, we're missing 2 RVs. Plane takes off. So 12 hours later, I get to London and I call Mike. I'm like, dude, what is going on? He's like, I don't know. Pretty sure the RV place screwed up, but there's kind of no way that we can prove that we dropped all these off. But like, I'm going there now. They've distributed, they start, as soon as we drop off the RVs, they start moving them around. So it's not like all 54 were sitting in one place. But finally, after like 2 days of doing this weird RV audit that we got involved in, we figured out that they actually did mess up counting them in, and we returned all the RVs back. So luckily, we did not go to prison for stealing 2 RVs.
RV audit.
Yeah, and I will always have something to remember this show by, not just those amazing memories. I have a little scar on my ankle from where all of the fire ants bit me, and I just kept scratching it for like 2 years. And that's just something that I always get to remember Langarado by.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan.
Dan can really paint a picture, and it's great to have him on Promoter 101. We've got a full interview coming in the weeks ahead.
John Huey, co-head of the office for CAA Nashville, Tennessee, Promoter 101.
Works Entertainments David Britz is my business partner, my mentor, and most importantly, my friend. We are absolutely thrilled to have him on Promoter 101.
Joined in the suite at the WA conference, Works Entertainment's David Britz. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here, man.
We've known each other a long time. We do a lot of business together. You actually are Luke's Pierce partner. You've got an amazing history in the business. You've been able to identify certain acts in their niche markets and really exploit that to a much bigger market and really develop some acts.
Yeah.
Exploiting in a good way in the sense of the business.
Positive exploitation.
Can't get famous in private.
We have been fortunate to work with some artists that, at least initially not everybody understood. We were able to maybe see some things that other people didn't see and be able to take that and run with it. It first starts with working with great talent and having a vision for that talent. I think we've been lucky to work with some really, really great people and be able to listen and to see what they do and help put a magnifying glass on it and expand their business.
Let's talk about the roster. It's Morgan James, who's an amazing voice. You are putting 98 Degrees back together and putting that on the road, and that was just announced. And that's selling really well. Straight No Chaser just finished their first amphitheater co-headline tour, and they're going back out in the winter for a normal theater tour, which is always a home run.
Yeah, another 61 shows this fall.
You're involved with Home Free. Who else is there?
We have A Great Big World. We just added John McLaughlin to the roster.
Really? Did that happen after the tour?
Yeah, right after the tour.
Clearly, he liked how that interaction went.
Well, I think he also really enjoyed spending time with Straight No Chaser and Postmodern Jukebox, and I think it was a good experience. And we found that there were some synergies there, and it felt like a natural fit. And seeing John perform live for multiple nights, we knew that there was a lot that could be done there. So we're looking forward to working with him.
When you've got someone that is that attractive, people want to like him right off the bat, especially a female audience where singer-songwriters is inclined to develop anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Musically, he's got the goods too. What do you do to exploit those two things to open the door to the public so people are paying attention in a world where there are so many singer and songwriters that there's a million Jason Mrazes and John Mayers and verging artists trying to be those guys?
Well, I think you have to look at what the differentiating points are on somebody like John. What makes him unique and special? Obviously, he's an attractive guy, amazing songwriter, amazing singer, really tremendous personality, both on and off stage. Also, John is a really strong piano player, exceptionally strong. When going back and looking at how he was marketed in the past, he was never really pushed as an instrumentalist and as a dynamic personality. So when we were looking at the project and trying to look at it from a different angle, it was looking at it from the lens of what can we do differently that hasn't been done? Otherwise, there's no reason to take on a project. The only reason to take on a project is if you feel like you can come in and add value and do something that somebody else hasn't done.
Little credit to Rich Mills there.
Rich definitely coined that phrase. Shout out to Rich Mills.
Obviously news to me. I didn't know you guys had signed John.
Yeah, breaking news on Promoter 101.
We get the exclusives.
Yeah. Our roster is eclectic by nature, and it's acts that we're passionate about, people that we really have a vision for. We have a rule at the company where unless we can see the next 10 steps, we don't sign the act. And I think that we've been fortunate to work with some people who we've seen the next 10 steps and beyond and had some success doing it.
Let's go back to Chaser. You were working at Stiletto at the time, Manilow being their biggest client. It made sense that Chaser would wind up at a management company that already had the ears of the Barry Manilow fans. Because it's an easy step to see one to the other. If you like Barry Manilow, you probably would enjoy Straight No Chaser.
Yeah, in the sense that they were artists that appealed to an adult contemporary audience.
They appealed to my mom.
Yeah, but the Straight No Chaser audience is 8 to 80, and you've got your high school and grade school choir kids who are obsessed with choral singing and then and with a cappella groups, and you've got your folks that were in groups growing up and still sing to this day, and people that are just intrigued by amazing vocals on stage. And also their show is like pretty much nothing else that's out there touring because it's entertainment. It is an evening of entertainment. It's comedy, it's music. You don't walk away from that show not being entertained. So you come for the experience. And what I think we've collectively as a team done really well is created an evening of entertainment. And they know they're not just coming to be sung to. They're a part of the experience every night.
Could have you found a more perfect storm for this to have worked? The strong alumni association with Indiana and the amazing time with PBS and how good that special was and the Christmas season and the exposure you guys were having with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and the appearances on the Today Show. I mean, could it have worked out any better?
in hindsight, it was the perfect storm in a lot of ways, but the difficulty isn't in creating the perfect storm. The difficulty is in maintaining and growing the business year in and year out. So as proud as I am of the kind of beginnings of the story and all the different things that we were able to do to really create the spark, I'm even more proud of the continued growth year over year of the business, because a lot of acts get hot and flame out. So that's been the most exciting thing for me.
So you're developing profit on top of growth, and this is working year after year, and you're year 7 or 8 into this?
8 years.
It seems to me that there's a possibility here where this could go on for 40 years if the members were so inclined.
Yeah, it's absolutely a brand. What we did almost without trying was create an annuity. I mean, I think everybody wants to create the next big touring property, especially if you look during the holiday seasons, whether it's the Nutcracker or whatever it is. It's this thing that goes out every year and people look forward to it, and it's part of their family traditions. And what we've been able to do with Stray No Chaser is create a family tradition. And whether that's during the holiday season, whether that's on a spring tour, whether that's on a summer tour, what families do together is go see Stray No Chaser and have a shared experience. That is something that we've worked really hard to create and are very proud of.
Is there more a cappella coming into your world? Are you looking to corner that market, or are you going to diversify into other artist management streams of different styles of acts?
Well, I mean, I think we definitely have a cappella clients. We have clients that are singer-songwriters. I mean, overall, I would say it's pretty diverse, but I think the through line for all the clients is they're all incredible vocalists and performers. Some of them perform with instruments, some of them don't. But the talent, the writing, and the performance ability is the through line between the entire roster. And as far as what we look for, it's just whatever we get excited about. We're not trying to check a box or sign something because it fits a specific area. It's whatever we get excited about and what we feel we can make a difference on is what we're going to sign. And that could be a kazoo player. That could be an instrumentalist. It's really all over the place.
Kazoo player would be an instrumentalist, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
I would really be thrilled to see you sign a kazoo player, but then I realize I'd probably have to tour it, and I have no idea how to sell that.
I would be calling you to book dates on the kazoo player.
You're really hands-on involved with marketing every show. In some cases, you guys are literally driving exactly where money is being spent.
Yeah, in almost all cases, that's how we operate. And we're fortunate to have great promoters and marketers on our local dates throughout the country and throughout the world. And I think what we like to do is create a roadmap for everybody, but that doesn't mean we negate the feedback and the conversations that we have with our local partners. It's, hey, listen, we do 600 shows a year, 300 alone with this act. Here's what we know works. If you think something else makes sense in your local market, let's have a conversation about it. But what we're trying to do is help our promoters as well, because we know that you, as the promoter, have a lot on your plate as well. And anything that we can do to make your job easier and to sell more tickets, we're going to try and do. And that's Kyle's goal.
Nobody knows how to sell more Stray No Chaser tickets than you guys do. You're the masters at it. You've been able to dial it in. You've trial and error over time, have figured out the nuance of selling that show. And you can bring that expertise to your partners, because the easier it is for you to sell tickets over the cheapest possible streams to maximize your buck, the better walkout and gross potential you have.
It's twofold. It's onefold, maximizing dollars spent, making sure that there's a return on that and that the band is making as much money as possible. But there's also the brand presentation. With anybody who is in the representation business, you want to make sure that your brand or a brand that you represent is positioned correctly every night, every show. And that's equally as important on the marketing side, as making sure that the band is presented the way they should be every night.
What does an ideal promoter come to the table with to make life easiest?
There was a time where there was an adversarial nature between promoters and managers. I think people are starting to realize that it's truly a partnership when acts go on the road, because they need good promoters in every market to be their partner and to be their advocate. As managers, it's our job to make sure we are, firstly, identifying great promoters, and two, continuing to work with them. And I'm a big believer in the people that I start with, I finish with. And I have had the ability to be with people who did the first $500 date, and they're still doing the same shows, except in much bigger rooms. And as long as my promoters do a good job and do the right thing, then they stay in our business.
Somebody got $500 dates. I had to pay $1,000. What the fuck?
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, you did $500 Morgan James dates.
I'd like a reduction on those first dates, please. David, I want to thank you for taking time and giving us a roadmap of some of your strategies.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Rich is a solid dude and a great hang. I'm so impressed with the business he's built. Really, really respect David.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Kira Finkenberg,
Patty Ann Tarleton,
Whitney Bond,
Amy Miller,
Dawn Holiday,
Marcy Allen,
Paula Palazzo,
Becca Leifer,
and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Celebrating some birthdays the week of November 20th to 26th. It's Thanksgiving week.
Hey, Monday, the 20th, Mills Entertainment's Justin Levy.
On Tuesday, wishing a happy birthday to Rick DeVoe, Chad Ivey, Eddie Wenrick, Deborah Fergie Ferguson, and David Zedek.
Wednesday, Jason Mastrine, ICM's Craig Brook, promoter Lori LaFavor, Tammy Bryant from the Tacoma Dome, and Paradigm Zone, Duffy McSwiggan.
On Thursday, wishing a happy birthday to Emporium Presents, Kelly Logue, front of house and kite surfer extraordinaire, Yonine Fellman, and Joan Lee.
Friday, the McDonald Theater's Kit Kesey.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to David Galea, Simon Galprin, Dan Perino, and Steve Lassiter.
Sunday, Stuart Anderson.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang at Promoter 101.
Hey, it's Pete Shapiro from Brooklyn Bowl and a bunch of other stuff, and I'm going to be down at FlyCon on Promoter 101. Shit.
Hey, if you want to reach out to us, we want to hear from you. Send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net. Also want to point out that we've moved the podcast up from Monday. I know a lot of you have already figured that out.
New Music Friday.
Makes the news a little fresher, more timely, and I know a lot of you like to listen to it over the weekend. So if we put it out Monday, you don't get it to the final weekend. But if we put it out on Friday, you have the ability, since most of you travel over the weekends, you can listen to it on a plane. If you don't like it, let us know. We're just playing with it. We're trying stuff out. But based on some feedback that we've heard early from doing it this past week, it sounds like a good thing. And I'm also under the understanding, because of the Thanksgiving weekend, we're going to go ahead and post Wednesday night for you traveling fans. So Louis Messina's interview is going to come up early.
And like Dan mentioned, on our next episode of Promoter 101, we'll have a featured in-depth interview with Messina Group's Louis Messina, talking about everything from George Strait to Taylor Swift to Ozfest and Ed Sheeran.
Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz,
Julia Frank,
Zariel Hyatt,
Ali Spagnola,
LX, Marsha Flessick,
Andrea Johnson,
and we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
appearing live on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba.